Hi, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and as promised, uh, I was saying that I was going to do a lot of different things with my YouTube channel, not just doing these photo critiques. And I was recently talking to a friend of mine, CC Chapman, who you're going to hear about in a minute, and he was talking about having to, find a camera system to invest in. And I've been toying with the idea of investing in something this year, though I'm not sure exactly what or when I'm going to be doing it. But I thought, we're kind of similar in a similar boat in terms of some of the considerations we're making. And I thought it would be kind of interesting to just have us both talk about it and share the conversation with you. But before we begin that, I thought that I'd have CC introduce himself and tell you a little bit about him. So CC, take it away.
Well, thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to this conversation because we are in that same boat right now. My name's CC Chapman. I'm here outside of Boston in the snowy suburbs outside of Boston. When people ask me what I do, I say I like to create and inspire. So I do freelance photography. I do freelance writing. I've written a couple books. I teach at Bentley University. I do a lot of online training as well, everything from content marketing to inspirational stuff. I am happiest when I am traveling with my camera, preferably with my family, but if not, speaking somewhere in the world. I do a lot of speaking as well. Father of two, dog lover, cooker, a bunch of other things. But yeah, a modern day Renaissance man, I guess. I do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, I make a living teaching, taking photographs, and writing.
Yeah, we're peas of the same pod, man.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, it used to be the old days. People would be like, "This is my business card. This is what I do." Don't work that way anymore.
I know. I gotta get some new business cards, and it's like, okay, what do I put on it on this one?
It's so hard, and it's funny because I've got my son starting college in the fall, and we talk about jobs and whatnot. And it's always fun to watch my kids try to explain to their friends what I do. It's always a trip.
Well, what spurred this conversation is I saw you post something on Facebook regarding considering all these different cameras like the Fuji and the Sony, and you actually getting your hands on some of them to actually get some hands-on time with each of these systems. And I thought I was really curious as to what you would choose, but I thought that what we could do is we could sort of each talk about what are some of the considerations that we're making, because we're both transitioning from other systems. And so why don't you lead off and just talk about, why you're considering investing a good amount of money for a new system and what you're using now.
Right. So, I mean, our paths first crossed when we were both part of the Samsung Image Logger program. Right. So for the past 2.5, 3 years, I'm not sure exactly when, all I've been shooting on is Samsung products, and they've worked great for me. Before that, I was a Canon guy. I mean, my very first digital camera that I bought was a Canon Rebel, and I love that thing. And I upgraded to the 50D, and then I had the 5D Mark III. I've got a pile of Canon glass here that I love. And I've tried, I've played with Olympus along the way and everything. And it was one of those things where all of a sudden when Samsung stopped making cameras, all of a sudden I realized, well, I've got this, gorgeous camera set up. I've got great lenses and everything, but the cameras are dead, for lack of a better term. They still work great. Don't get me wrong. If you have an NX1, it's a beautiful camera. It works fantastic. But I can no longer connect to my phone. I can no longer transfer stuff. There's no firmware. There's nothing coming down the road for that. So I needed to switch to a new platform. And it was one of those things where I wasn't sure, my gut instinct was go back to Canon. I've probably got 7 or 8 different lenses. I've got their pro lens. I don't even remember what they're called. The L series, I think, is what Canon. Right. I can't keep track of all the different acronyms and numbers. But at the same time, I was like, well, you know what? This is the perfect time to look at other brands. I have friends who rave about Fuji, and I have other friends who rave about Sony. And it's been interesting to watch those platforms over the last few years start coming up. And Olympus has got some new stuff too that's really interesting to look at. But then on the same time, I was like, well, do I go back to Canon? I've got the glass. They've got this new M5 coming out. So it was one of those perfect things where I threw out, I'm really blessed to have a lot of friends who shoot on a lot of different formats, a lot of different, different styles, different needs. And I put it out there and just kind of said, hey guys, what do you think of these? I'm kind of leaning between looking at the Sony and the Fuji, but I haven't touched any of them. And what was really great was all these friends jumped in and said, well, I love this because of this, and I hate this because of that. And this great conversation happened. And then I was really lucky that a friend of mine that, unbeknownst to me, knows the team at lensrentals.com. And they said, hey, CC, do you want us to send you a Fuji and a Sony to play with for a couple of weeks? And I was like, yes, please. So, right now they're both sitting behind. I mean, I've had the two cameras. I've been very blessed that I've been able to have these two cameras that I was looking at, kind of the front runners in my head, just to kind of play with. And at the same time, I rented an 80D from Canon to play with, because I know everybody's raving about that. And I just today put in an order to rent the M5, which is the new Canon mirrorless, because I just want to see if it's any good or not before I drop, thousands of dollars and commit to a platform, because it is a platform too. It's not just like the old days where you buy a camera. You're committing. If you're doing it right, you're committing for the long haul. And I really want to make sure I make the right decision.
Absolutely. And it's a tough one, especially now, because there are so many different cameras that are really, really good.
Oh yeah, there's infinite, I remember the old days where, it's pretty much Canon versus Nikon, right. I mean, granted, there was always other players, but those are the ones, 5 years ago, nobody was talking about Sony when it came to digital cameras. I mean, Sony makes great other things, but nowadays there's all these great options, and the internet allows us to, I don't know how many reviews I've watched on YouTube over the last 3 weeks, just of different people's opinions, both the good and the bad, because not one camera is right for everybody. And, you and I both know, we've been shooting long enough that, we have our styles, we have the things that matter to us that may not matter to other people. It all depends on what you're shooting and how you shoot, and everybody's different. So I value having the difference of opinions, and I'm psyched to hear this conversation.
Yeah, because for me it's a lot different, because I was initially a Nikon shooter when I started shooting, because I was just like, Nikon was the brand that held a mystique for me. And for a long time, I worked for Nikon for about 8 or 9 years, so I was like all invested in that system. And then, but this was before digital.
Okay.
And so I had a lot of film cameras, a lot of film lenses. And then at some point, when I started working for Warner Publishing, I started working as an editor at Outdoor Photographer and a couple of other magazines. So for the longest time, I didn't have to invest in anything. I had the opportunity to use equipment all the time, because there was new cameras coming in, every couple of months. Yeah. So I would just grab the latest Canon, the latest Panasonic. It really didn't matter to me what I was using. I was having fun playing around with all these different cameras. But at some point when I left there, I had to invest in a new camera, and I switched to Canon largely because at that particular time, and I think I bought the 20D, the autofocus performance on the Canon was much better than anything that was being offered by Canon at Nikon at the time. And for me, autofocus speed was really sort of critical. That's not really a huge issue now comparatively, but at the time it was significant enough for me to sort of consider the switch, because I knew I was going to have to invest in new lenses anyway, because I didn't have any autofocus lenses. So I just went with the Canon, and I used that for the longest time, but I was never completely comfortable with the configuration of the buttons and the controls.
Yeah.
On the Canon, you have dual function buttons. So, if you wanted to control an aperture or f-stop or something, you have the top control wheel and the main control wheel on the back. And I could never remember which of the two to do. And with Nikon, I always felt that intuitively everything was where it needed to be. And that was just sort of a personal preferences, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who the design of the Candid is much better than the Nikon. But for me, that was always sort of a frustrating thing. I didn't have any issues in terms of image quality or anything that with respect to the image with the Canon cameras. But increasingly, I found myself using that equipment less and less. And so, like when we started shooting stuff with the Samsung, I found myself using the Canon stuff less and less and less. And at some point, I had thousands of dollars of stuff up on the shelf that I wasn't using.
Yeah.
So I was always already sort of toying with the idea of transitioning to another system. And even though I was using the Samsung stuff, I still was thinking that, well, this doesn't completely fit all my needs. So I'll probably invest in another system. And so that money was just sitting there.
Yeah.
I sold all the Canon stuff. And so right now it's kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? And like you said, the Samsung's not making any more stuff. So this kind of stuff is, the NX1 is a great camera. I like using it. I use it for commercial work that I do right now. But I know there's only a finite life to it. So even though it fits my needs right now, I don't want to wait until I can't get it repaired anymore. I can't get,
Well, that's what I was worried about. I was like, I'm going to be on a shoot or I'm going to be traveling somewhere, and all of a sudden the camera's going to die, and what am I going to do with it?
Right, exactly.
I'd rather. I don't want to have to jump into a system out of need. Rather, I mean, granted, I mean, you could rent. I mean, there's options, but yeah,
right,
I'm exactly there with you. I want to know my system. And when I go shooting, if someone's paying me to take pictures, I want to know my system.
Absolutely. So I've been using the Fuji X100 for a while. So
nice.
That's been like my go-to camera for all my personal work. I wasn't taking the Samsung. I wasn't taking the Canon out when I traveled or when I just went out for the day.
Yeah.
The small compact design of the Fuji really appealed to me. So while I've enjoyed using that camera, it's not been completely satisfactory, largely because of the autofocus.
Okay.
And some of the sort of the controls on it, especially in terms of being able to change the autofocus point and things like that. And I know that some of those have been remedied with the more recent models that they've come up with. But again, I have to invest in a system.
Yeah.
And when I see what's being offered by Sony and Panasonic and all these other manufacturers, it's kind of like, I know I'm never going to find the perfect camera. But the thing is, can I find a system that will take care of most of my needs and my preferences, and that I'll be okay with? So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get the X100F, which is the replacement for the T, at some point, because I've really come accustomed to using that. But I'm still thinking about what's the system that I'm going to be investing for most of my work.
Well, and another consideration that Samsung, and I don't want to sound like I'm slamming Samsung. I mean, because we both had good experiences with them. But one of the thing that Samsung definitely put a little bug in the back of my head is, I'm worried about any company where photography is not a huge part of their business. Samsung got into the photography business, 2-3 years ago, non-phone, non-VR, actual professional photography. They got into it, and I remember laughing. I'm like, Samsung doesn't know anything about cameras. What are they doing? Yeah. And then using it and watching it progress and get better, but then all of a sudden go away. And I'll use Sony as an example. I'm a little hesitant about Sony because Sony makes killer electronics. I mean, I have multiple Sony TVs in my house. I mean, I've loved Sony as a company, but I'm a little worried because photography is something new to them. And how, granted, they've obviously spent a lot of money and investment in engineering, and I know someone's going to watch this and yell at me for this, but I'm a little hesitant. I mean, don't get me wrong, their cameras are amazing, but I do worry a little bit. Whereas, Fuji or Olympus, Panasonic, they've been doing Canon, Nikon. I don't see any of those going away anytime soon because photography is such a core business to them. But it is something that I'm thinking about. It's one of those little marks against something like Sony where I'm like, I don't know. Are they going to stick with photography? I would like to think they would, but I didn't think Samsung was going to get out of the game so fast either.
Yeah, that was a little frustrating, but
yeah.
but I think I kind of don't mind that I'm in the situation where I'm in right now, because
I'm not either, because there's so many choices, right?
Right, exactly. Because before, if I had invested in so much of a system, stepping out of it would have been like oh my God, what am I
Yeah.
going to do? But I'm already sort of in the middle and halfway there. But I thought that I'd share some images
Sure.
and talk specifically about what I'm sort of looking for in the system. I mean, what is absolutely necessary for
Okay.
me. I'm not really up to date with all the cameras that are out there, so I know about some of the Sony A7 S2s or whatever.
All the numbers. Isn't it so hard to
Numbers
keep track of all the numbers?
So I kind of have a general sense of them, but I'm not looking at sort of specific models. But I do know that there are certain features that are kind of important to me, and I chose like 5 images to kind of illustrate what some of those are. So let me get here, and then let me know when you see my desktop. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I see Lightroom. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So for those of you who don't know, I do a lot of street work. So for me, what I've always need for a camera is that it's really intuitive, that I don't really have to be looking at it and trying to figure out the controls in order to be able to make whatever changes I need to with respect to white balance, exposure compensation, any of those things. So I'm constantly doing stuff on the fly. I use aperture priority or manual mode. If I'm using aperture priority, I'm constantly adjusting exposure compensation to deal with exposure. And I don't like having to go through menus to make changes. So to some extent, some of the changes that Fuji has made in terms of some of the controls that they have and making them available for on dials and direct controls really sort of appeals to me. I've not had an opportunity to use the more recent cameras, so I don't know how good they'll feel in my hand. But that's something that I know is kind of important to me. I do not like cameras that force me to go into the screen or into the menu in order to affect controls. Having the ability to customize buttons is really kind of key for me, because I'm constantly anticipating stuff while I'm on the street. I'll see somebody walking down the street. I go, oh, if they come into the frame at this particular point, I want to be able to get the shot. So I need to be able to make those changes really, really fast so that I can make the shot. So that's in terms of the way it feels in my hand. That's important, but it's really about, how can I affect change with respect to all that stuff? That's particularly important to me. I'm going to be doing a lot of portrait work, and this is Jesse Thorne, and I can't believe I just forgot his name. He's John Hodgman.
I thought that's who that was.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of his name either, but I'm like, I know this guy.
Yeah, John Hodgman. He was the PC guy in the old Apple Mac ads, but portraits is increasingly. I used to do a lot, and I'm getting back into it. So one of the things that I really am considering in terms of getting into a system is, if I'm doing portraits, I like doing a lot of environmental portraits, but one of the things that I want to be able to do is sort of tether my camera to a laptop computer. I've always had an affinity for the optical viewfinder, but I know that the EVFs on a lot of these cameras are really amazing. But when I'm doing portraits, I want to be able to see those images on my laptop or on the computer screen, so I can really discern that everything that I'm trying to get in the shot is happening. I find that some of the EVFs and even some of the optical viewfinders are too small, and I think it's probably because I'm getting older.
It happens to all of us.
Yeah, that looking at that small screen doesn't really allow me to discern whether everything else that's happening that I need to happen is happening within the frame. So it doesn't absolutely have to have that, but I think increasingly that for the portrait work that I'm going to be doing, having the ability to tether is important. So I know Canon and Nikon do that. I know Sony does that. I know Fuji does it, but you have to buy an additional software for it. I'm not aware that Olympus or Panasonic offer that, at least using Lightroom. They may have their own applications to do it, but I'm for the most part, unless I start investing in, say, Capture One, which is considered sort of the default program for tethering, which which involves another investment. That that's something that I have to consider. I do increasingly, well, not increasingly. I've been doing a good amount of sort of documentary work.
Dude, this is a gorgeous photo.
Oh, thanks.
Not that the other ones weren't, but this one I love this one.
This was a wedding for a family friend that I shot last year. And one of the things that's kind of when I do this kind of documentary work, I apply a lot of the stuff that I learned on the street. And one of the things is being able to compose off center and being able to quickly change the AF point from the center or grouping is really key for me. I'm constantly having to change it. It's really difficult to do that on the Fuji X100.
Yeah, see, one of the things, I'm like you. This is something I want to be able to control, and I was really excited because the Fuji X-T2 has a joystick on the back that is specifically geared towards you're looking through the viewfinder. You can control the autofocus point, and then that's the other reason why I want to look at the new Canon M5, because supposedly you're looking through it. You actually use the touch screen. You're looking through the viewfinder, but you use your thumb on the touch screen for the focal point, which sounds really intriguing to me. I'm just worried. I'm curious how well it works, but it sounds like an interesting. I've never seen anybody else do that, and I'm very curious for this exact reason.
And that has to be really responsive for me, because I was reading some stuff with the Fuji that even though it has that joystick, there's a slight delay that some people are experiencing.
Oh, interesting. I haven't read. I mean, I haven't hardcore shot, a lot, but it's been working really good. And also, one of the little things I like about it too is, if you push the joystick in, it automatically bounces back to center, which I found really helpful.
Yeah, that's that's definitely a good thing to have. Being able to get back to center is really key.
Yeah,
but that is, and it's something you really can't discern until you're actually practically shooting with it. I mean, when you're sitting at your desk and you're playing around with it, it seems like, oh, everything is cool. But as soon as you have to shoot something, oh my God.
Yeah, that's when you find that's why I was so excited to actually have these hand on for a couple weeks, just because, see, like you said, it's the only way you could. Watching a review, the way somebody else shoots it doesn't matter until you actually get out and shoot with a camera. You just don't know if it works for you specifically.
Yeah, and focus speed, I think, for the most part, I think most of the cameras today are pretty damn fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, I think anything you're looking at, anything we're going to consider, that's not the problem anymore.
Right. So my biggest issue is, like, with a lot of the cameras, you have all these choices in terms of the grouping of autofocus sensors. How not just how wide an area is covered by autofocus, but whether you're using a single AF sensor, whether you're using a small group, or whether you're using them in their entirety.
Yeah.
I'm constantly flying between those choices, because when I'm shooting something, there are times when I really want to isolate and target a specific spot for autofocus detection, and there are other times where I want to have it a little wider group so I can sort of hedge my bets in order to be able to get it.
Yep.
But it's not just sufficient for me to just have those controls. It's being able to change it when I need to. And if I have to hold a button and then turn a dial or go through multiple multiple steps to get there, it's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
I want to be able to either by default or by changing the settings on my camera to be able to make those changes really, really quickly. Once that stuff, if I'm slowed down in that way, that means I risk losing the shot. And sometimes I'll have to just fly with it and hope that the camera setting is not sufficiently incorrect that I don't get the shot. But and this is something you can't read from a spec sheet.
No.
And you can look at all these cameras and go, wow, all these amazing specs. But most of the things that I usually frustrate me about a camera was never reflected in anything I read in the brochure.
Right. Never.
It's always about me going out there in the field and shooting. this was I do some stuff for different musicians and music producers that I know, and they were recording a song for a new album, and I was in the studio here recording. And one of the things that I like is with usually with the optical viewfinders is that they can be pretty bright, even under low light conditions. And some of the EVFs, when they get really under really low light, they look kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And for this, I was using the Fuji for this shot, and it was just nice to be able to just switch over to the optical viewfinder and just sort of frame my shot, even though I wasn't getting exactly what I would see through the EVF. It was just like I just want to know that I got what I need, especially along the edges of the frame. EVFs are wonderful. I mean, I really enjoy them. And I know that if I go to a mirrorless system, that's really going to be my only choice.
Yeah.
But I do want a bright, large-looking screen. I don't like some of these screens that are just small. Again, just because it's just hard for me to discern the entire frame in a way that I would like. And I'm always I have to wear my glasses in order to frame, but sometimes the eye relief on some of these don't give me a complete view of the frame. And it's just like, and again, it's just like, you don't realize it until you're actually practically using the camera to sort of discover that.
Right.
I know some of I've usually used sort of pro-end cameras for the most part. So it's always been like 100% viewfinder, generous eye relief. So it's not been an issue even with my glasses. But some of the cameras that I'm sort of attracted to don't always have that. And so it's kind of like, okay, do I compromise on this in order to have the benefit of some other feature that I really, really like?
Yep.
This is another one from that recording session. And this just speaks to a lot of the work that I'm called to has been under incredible low light situations. So for me, this was shot at 6400 ISO at f2.2. Okay, because there was really like no light there.
None. Yeah.
And I find that I need to have decent results at least at 3200 ISO.
And thankfully, more and more cameras are, as the ISOs go through the roof, there's, I remember before, not that long ago, we would never shoot that high because it would just be grainy. And, unless you were shooting concert photography or something.
Yeah. And I could get away with 3200 ISO. I would prefer to feel really comfortable at 6400.
Yeah.
But I think what's kind of important is because I hear a lot of people talk about how high ISO you can or can't use. And for me, it's like, well, how are the images going to be used?
Exactly.
So a lot of the stuff that I've been doing is sort of this documentary sort of style work is not getting blown up into posters. A lot of images from this shoot, 2 of the images are going to end up on the cover for the CD and the internal art, and it's also going to be on the website.
Right.
So those images are not going to be blown up huge. So even if I've been shooting this at 12,800 with all the noise that would accompany it, noise wouldn't be an issue, right?
Right.
Because of the relatively small size. It's just my preferences as a photographer. I would like to have something as clean as possible.
Of course.
But practically speaking, all the work that I'm doing, whether it's the music stuff, the NGO stuff, the occasional wedding that I'm doing, practically speaking, most of those images are not going to see anything bigger than 8x10. Either print in a magazine or in some sort of printed material or on a website, which I think the majority of my work is being used. So as much as I would prefer great performance at 6400, I could live with 3200, but I can have that preference, but it's not going to necessarily be critical, which leaves me open to considering the Olympus or the Panasonic that use the 4/3 system, which even at 3200 give you pretty decent results. At 6400, I'm not sure from what I've seen online, But 3200, it could live. I could possibly live with that. So that doesn't completely exclude the 4/3 system for me, because again, I'm thinking about how the image is going to be used in the end. And at least in terms of the Olympus, one of the things that kind of appeals to me, let me get out of the screen here, is that small form factor. I mean, I had some friends that have the Olympus system, and I hold that camera and it's just like, wow, this is so incredibly small and compact, but it still feels comfortable in my hand. And from my past experience, I feel like the Olympus system has one of the fastest autofocus systems of any of these smaller cameras. It's, to me, to my thinking, again, I have not used the most recent Fujis, but it always seemed that Olympus had an edge in terms of autofocus speed as compared to the Fujis. I had less of an issue there. But then the Fuji has, you know, incredible color, especially with the JPEGs.
Yeah,
they're just phenomenal. I'm not a big JPEG shooter. I shoot raw with everything, but I'd like the color renderings when I do use it there. So, you know, suffice it to say, it's like those are the features that I want, and I know that there are reasons why Sony does incredible ISO, you know, at high ISO performance. You can virtually shoot in the dark, but I'm not necessarily convinced that the autofocus performance is the best on that.
Well, and it's funny because I know one of my friends, Colby Brown, is you know, big landscape photographer, and he was raving about Sony, you know, shooting low light or shooting landscapes, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, I've seen your photos, but that's I will shoot a landscape once in a great while, but it's not my thing. It's just, you know, and one of the things you hit on, one of the things that I hate about the Sony that you mentioned is I hate having to go to menus to do stuff. The other day, my daughter had a friend over. He's a high school student who's into photography, and he's like, "Oh my god, can I touch this?" I said, "Yeah, go for it." And he was shooting some pictures, and he came over to me. He's like, "I can't figure out how to put this Sony into manual focus." I go, "What do you mean? It's right on the lens. It's not on the lens. What? I've never seen a lens that didn't have a manual focus switch." And then I'm looking all over the camera, and it was in a menu item. I had to go down to a menu item to turn the camera to manual focus. And I was like, I've never seen that before. I couldn't believe that I couldn't find out. I felt like such an idiot. I'm like, I don't know how to put it, because I extremely rarely shoot manual focus. So I hadn't flipped it yet, but I was dumbfounded that that's how it worked. I couldn't believe it. And their menu system confused me a lot too.
Yeah. I mean, until digital, I never read instruction manuals, but now you do.
Oh, and I do. Camera manuals are the only manuals I read. I don't read any other but a camera manual I have to, because there's always stuff that you can't find.
And one other thing that I didn't have an image to sort of illustrate it is just the battery performance on the cameras, because especially with some of these smaller ones. I mean, I have, like on the Fuji, I have three batteries. I usually get away with 2.
Yep.
But on occasion, you know, having that third battery from full day shooting is a must. But I know that you know, performance varies on a lot of these cameras.
Oh yeah.
In terms of battery, so going in, I know that I'm going to invest in at least 2 batteries
minimum, right? I mean, that was one of the things I remember when I was trying out. This was 2 years ago now, shooting on some of the Olympuses. The battery performance was some of the best I'd ever seen on cameras. I hope they maintained that going forward. I haven't touched an Olympus in a while, but I remember that was one of the things I loved about that brand, because the batteries just seemed to last longer than anything else in normal out shooting, you know, no temperature weirdness and those sort of things. But yeah, battery, you got to have 2-3 of them minimum, right?
Yeah. And you know, we're talking about systems, and we should talk a little bit about lenses. But you know, let's hold off on that. And why don't you share some pictures and some of the sort of things that you are are of importance to you, and then we can discuss lenses.
Let's see how this works. Let's make sure I do this right. Application window. This one, maybe. Let's see. So, are you seeing my puppy dog?
No. If you go to desktop and then just simply go to, yeah, I'm seeing your dog.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a photo. Okay, good. All right, good. So yeah, this is just a picture I took the other day of my dog Nadia. this was actually, I know this, not that I remember the cameras for all these pictures, but this one I know was taken with the Fuji X-T2 the other day. And anybody who likes dogs or anything that moves knows that you got to get a picture and it's got to be quick. And this, I was really shocked. This is with their 35 millimeter prime. I was shocked how crisp it focused on her. And then I had it at 1.4 and I just loved how everything just drops out behind her eyes and her ears. And I love faces. I love portraits. And so I always want to make sure that I can get the eyes really fast and I can, see what I want to see. Let's see if this, I don't know if this, okay, this is not going to share the way.
And one of the things about the new cameras is their eye detection technology.
Yeah, I haven't
really
played
nice.
with that much.
I have been using it a lot, especially for the street stuff.
Okay.
Especially when I'm using, because I usually, with street stuff, I'm usually choosing, the smaller group of sensors and targeting. But sometimes I'll probably work with an aperture of f4.
Okay.
And I'll use the eye detection just to sort of ensure that I get that eye sharp. Because sometimes you can't singularly target an eye with a single area sensor when someone's moving. So having that technology has been a real help because it's helped me nail some shots that I think otherwise I might have missed.
Yeah, and it's fun. I saw that setting and I haven't shot much with it. I also like talking about eyes. I mean, this is one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. I was in Ghana on a humanitarian trip, and this woman just caught my attention. I want to shoot faces. I want to see details. I want to see good colors. And I just realized I'm not sharing this the right way.
but we can see it though.
Did you? Okay, good. Okay, all right. I just was like, oh, what just happened? She disappeared. There's you. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so I do a lot of travel photography. And one of the things that's important to me is I want to be able to carry my camera everywhere. I want to be able to throw it in a backpack. I travel really, really light usually. So weight is of importance. It's not like the end all be all, but like right now where I'm comparing the Fuji and the Sony's a tank. I mean, I could like beat somebody with that thing. It's so heavy, but and the Fuji's not, but the light, the weight is not the end all be all, but it's definitely something I think about because I want to be able to travel and shoot on the go wherever I am.
And that's one of the things that that size and weight. I mean, people talk about the, size, how they're much smaller, these micro four thirds cameras and these APS-C size cameras and these mirrorless cameras are. And as much as it seems like a cliche now to say that, it is a big factor for me.
Yeah.
I do not want to be carrying a Domkey with all that stuff with me. Especially if I know I'm going to be shooting all day or if I'm traveling.
So, yeah, if you're walking around all day, you do not want, like when I was in Ghana, I had my backpack on and we were out moving all day. The last thing I want to do is be lugging, I've got other gear in there. And for me, at least, the everyone gets on the whole full frame versus cropped or 4/3 or whatever. Right. For me, I can think of a handful of times over the last 3 years when I was shooting mirrorless that I thought, God, I wish I had a full frame right now. Because like you said, I'm not shooting fine art photos to be blown up on a wall. It's just not what I'm shooting for most of the time. So I haven't missed the full frame. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I love having a full frame sometimes, but it's not the end all be all for me. I know some people are like, how could you consider shooting anything but full frame? I haven't missed it.
Yeah. I love the full frame viewfinder.
Yeah.
Because it's so huge as compared to APS-C. But that's hardly a justifiable reason to spend that much more money for a full frame.
Agreed.
Than just for the viewfinder. So it's kind of like, no, I'll spend that money elsewhere as much as I would like it. Because like I said before, the high ISO performance was largely the reason why we were convinced to move to full frame.
Exactly.
But with the improvements that they've made in terms of the sensors and the processing, it's really hard to say, okay, I need to spend $1,500 to $3,000 more on a full frame at the relatively same megapixel count as the APS-C or other sensor sizes, simply for the benefit of being able to say, oh, I got a full frame. I know there are other reasons why people choose full frame,
for sure,
but for me, it's primarily been an issue of ISO, and that is a less and less of an issue than it used to be.
For sure. So one of the other pictures I want to share here. I love technology. There we go. I want colors. I want really good colors. And like this was a tough situation. I was at an event in Fargo, North Dakota, and you want to talk about lighting hell? I mean, you can tell there's like a projector on the right. The guy's in a spotlight. There's a back room. And I just want good colors and good, I want to be able to see his red shoes, and I don't want his face to be blown out. The little baby in the background. This was just a really quick shoot. I was sitting in the front row of this event, attending it and speaking at it. And I just want a camera that really gets the deep, rich colors. Yeah, I know you can fix stuff in post, but I don't want to think about that. I'd rather get it in the camera. And this was just one of the pictures that I thought illustrated that very, very well. Another one, getting good colors. I share this picture. This was this was the first concert I ever shot. And this was taken with my digital Rebel. I remember that. It's Jack White with the Raconteurs. But I like the fact that, here I was, this little nobody with a camera, shooting from the pit at this concert, and got this shot that I will always remember. The guy from Rolling Stone was like, dude, nice shot. And I was like, oh, I did it. Yay, I took a good concert. I'd never shot concert photography before. And it's definitely not my, what I'm going to be shooting a lot, but it gave me an appreciation for being able to shoot fast and quick and know that you're going to get stuff. And I'm okay with, some motion blur going on with his hands and whatnot, because I think that works in concert photography. Definitely not something that drives my decision, but when you were asking for photos, this one I've always been really, really proud of. You ever want to learn? You ever want to learn if you're any good at photography? Go shoot a concert. They're the hardest things to shoot, but man, they're fun.
But this is a great shot as an example, because you don't necessarily, have to have the top of the line camera. I mean,
right. Well, I remember this. I remember this very well, because I remember when I was trying to decide what I wanted to shoot on, and I asked a buddy of mine, this guy Chris Marquardt, who does Tips from the Top Floor.
Yeah, Chris, yeah.
I just butchered his last name, but Chris is a dear friend. I never forget. He said, "Listen, dude," he's like, "just pick this." I mean, this was, God, I don't even remember when this is, but he said, picking the camera is the easiest thing. He goes, to start out, just pick one of them that feels right to you, and then you're going to spend all your money on glass. And I remember that picture that I took there, that concert photo. I vividly remember. That was I took that with the Canon, the 24-105 L lens, which cost more than the camera did. But I remember, because that was the concert photographer lens. That's the one I had to have for this event. So I bought it and loved it. But yeah, it's so funny when people get so worked up over, what did you take that picture with? Earlier, one of my friends who saw, who knows I'm doing this test of cameras, they're like, dude, that picture's great. Which one's that from? And I laughed. I go, that's from my iPhone. Because they assumed it's so much more about the photographer than it is the camera. But at the same time, we as photographers know we're talking today about picking the right camera for us.
And this is a great way to sort of transition into the whole discussion about glass, because like you said, that's the big investment. And for me, one of the things that, if you had looked at my Canon bag, I had so much glass in there, and I would say half of it I hardly ever used.
Right? Yeah.
Right. So when I'm thinking about glass, people will talk about, oh, look at how many different lenses Canon and Nikon have compared to, brand X.
Right.
And for me, it's like, I don't care about how many lenses they have in the system. I know the lenses that I need and use, and I'm just concerned whether or not they are good quality, how affordable they are.
Yeah.
That's a big issue for me. And And size and weight is a relative issue for me, because I know that when I invest in a system, I'll probably invest in something like a 24-70 zoom, fast zoom 2.8, and then I'll probably have 3 fast fixed focal lengths, like a 24, a 35, and then probably a 50.
Okay, I was curious. I'm like, he's going to jump to an 85?
I've always had 85s, but I've not used them as often as I think I would just justify the cost.
Right. Oh, because they're so expensive. They're beautiful, but dang, are they expensive.
Right. Because most of the portrait work that I'm interested in doing is more environmental portrait.
Right. You don't want
I'm thinking that the 28 to 70 at the 70 end will satisfy that sort of telephoto that I want. I mean, the 85 at 1.8 or 1.4 gives you this creamy bokeh, but I'm not doing fashion and glamour work. Right. So for me, if I think I need an 85, I'll go to a rental place.
Right. And that's what's amazing too, is the fact that, it wasn't that long ago renting camera gear was a lot harder than it is now. If you've got to shoot, you can get a lens tomorrow, especially if you live anywhere near any major city. But even that, I mean, they'll FedEx it. I mean, you can get anything you need for a specific, but I'm the same way. I need like the 24 to 105 was like my Canon favorite lens. I kept that on all the time because I could shoot anything with that. Give me that lens and like a 50 millimeter, and I could live. I could live with anything else. I mean, because that's, I don't need the big telephoto. The couple times I've used one of those, like when I've shot sports, which is probably my least favorite thing in the world to shoot, I've rented a big lens. I don't ever need to own that big, beautiful, 50 to 200 or 300.
Yeah. I've had the Nikon 80 to 200. I have had the Canon, equivalent, the Samsung equivalent.
Yeah.
I have in 25 years worth of owning those cameras, I hardly ever use those. I mean, those things, by the time I get rid of them, they're as pristine as when I first bought them. Because I would use them every once in a while, just because it just didn't fit into how I shoot. I mean, I bought them thinking, oh, it would be good to have when I need to shoot something, and it certainly has. That's proven itself, several times. But when I think about how much money I spent on that, like $1,500 or $2,000, and I go, man, if I just rented the those lenses when I needed them, rather than investing all that money, what else could I have done with that money?
Well, it's like I'll never forget my wife. I love her, but I'll never forget. She bought me a lens one time for my birthday, and she bought me. I vividly remember this. It was a 135 prime, and I'm like, "What am I ever going to shoot with this?" I mean, I just shot my son's senior portraits, and I used it just for some variety because I was curious. But I'm like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I have that piece of glass. Will I ever use it? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have bought it myself. It's nice to have the variety. I mean, sometimes, let's face it, it's sometimes fun to play around with stuff, but too many people get sucked into I need all this glass. And the more you shoot, I think the more you shoot, the more you realize there's 3 or 4 lenses that you do everything with, maybe 1 or 2 really,
Because seriously, if I only had 2 lenses to work with, it would be like the 24 and a 35. Even though they're very similar, it's just like if those were the only 2 choices I had, that's what I would go for, because it would serve the bulk of what I shoot.
Yeah, I remember I cried 2 years ago. My family and I took a road trip across the country, and all I brought was my 16 millimeter prime on the Samsung, and I shot everything with it. I loved it because sometimes it's a fun challenge. But then I'll never forget, we were on Route 66 at the midway point, and they actually have a permanent photo stand, and the wind came along and blew it over, and the lens just went crack. And I just was like, oh my God. I mean, I cried because I was like, more for the fact that I was like, I love this lens. What am I going to do? I did have a backup lens with me, but it's one of those things. You don't need all that glass. It's fun to play with, but don't waste your money on it. It's too easy. It's too easy. You watch new photographers do it all the time. Dive in. I need all of this.
And I fell into the trap of saying, oh, I'm going to buy this because I'll end up doing more of this kind of work.
Right,
and
because
it
you have
never happens, right?
Right.
You know, you think it's going to inspire that kind of work, and it's just like I go, am I not able to make certain images because I don't have this right now?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then I'll invest in it. And it comes up repeatedly, it's like for example, if I keep renting a particular lens and I go,
for sure,
I keep spending rent, let me get it.
Yeah.
But if I only rent that 85 1.4 once in a year,
not worth it. Rent it, don't buy it. Yeah,
exactly. And it's great that we live in times where you can rent that stuff and have it the next day. So that's but you know, I when I think about how much I'm likely to spend, because I'm thinking if I invest in a probably a high-end body, 2 or 3 lenses, probably 2 lenses to start with, and a flash unit, I'm looking anywhere between $5,000 or $10,000.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
wait,
I'm in no rush.
$5,000 to $10,000? What do you really?
That's what I'm thinking, because I'm looking at having a prime, a fast zoom lens, 2.8. Okay, and so that's like, that gets to be around 1,500.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at getting a fast fixed focal lengths.
Okay.
You know, in terms of the 35 and the 50.
Okay.
So yeah, it gets up there for me.
See, I was looking at like the 3,000 to 5,000 range, just because starting with like a simple prime and then a simple, 24 to 70-ish sort of thing.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to get a speed light. I'm probably gonna have to come up, have hopefully a TTL off-camera flash cord, because I never use the flash on camera.
God no.
Whatever other accessories are sort of necessary.
Well, that's the other thing too. That was the thing I was thinking about the other day. Something I never thought about, right? So little thing, like, just because, and I keep talking about Fuji and Sony only because that's the two I have physically in my hands. Something I never thought about. Sony has the little, it's right here. So it's the battery charger is one of these things where you just it flips out and you plug it in the wall.
Yeah.
Whereas the Fuji is the box that's got the cable. I'm like, there's another point there. I could lose a cable. I'm like, I like battery chargers like this. Like, that's not going to make my decision. But it was one of those little things when you are thinking about a camera system. Sometimes these little things matter. Like this is I was like, God, I want this version for everybody.
Right. So what? How long have you been using the 2 cameras?
I've had them both for a week now.
And how long are you gonna have them for?
I got them for another week. They gave them to me for 2 weeks to try.
And are you leaning one way or another?
Out of those two, I am definitely leaning towards Fuji. Major considerations are weight. The Sony, because the other thing that I was the huge thank you to lensrentals.com. I mean, just because they also allowed me to pick out lenses. So I picked out similar lenses. Like I have a 35 millimeter prime from both of them. And the size difference is ridiculous. I mean, the Fuji is this big, the Sony's this big. I mean, it literally, I don't know why they're so different. Mm-hmm. So the weight factor, I also really intuitively love the Fuji having all the dials on top. I had never seen that before since the old film days. I mean, but just having all those dials and being able to assign, the front dial for exposure changing and just having everything right there. I really like it. And I like the feel of the camera in my hand. Image quality's, similar. Granted, I know the Sony's full frame and the Fuji's not. So that's a different thing, but definitely out of the two, definitely leaning more towards the Fuji at the moment. But I really, really want, like I said, I've got this Canon M5 that I paid for renting. They're not coming till the end of the month. Like I'm holding out hope that Canon might sneak back in because I really want to play with that camera.
Well, yeah, I saw the review in the Camera Store YouTube channel.
I watched that today.
So they were really glowing about that. But again, it's a camera that you really don't know until you get your hands on it.
Right. So that's why I did. I placed the order today because they said they wouldn't have them to them. I'm like, I want to order. I put it in, so I'm going to have it for a week at the end of the month to actually play with it, and I can't wait to actually. It's killing me though because I realize, I return. I'm going to have a week without a camera. It's going to drive me nuts. I mean, I still have other cameras, but. It's weird because I'm the sort of person that I want to dive in and I really want to buy the platform and start building it right away and shooting with it. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I'm waiting. I'm using every bit of willpower not to dive in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a good thing to just get a feel for it. I mean, a week is, it's pretty short.
I know, but the nice part is it's forcing me to get out and shoot. Oh, like, I was like, okay, my wife, we went running errands. She's like, why do you have a camera with you? I'm like, because I just want to shoot stuff just to try it as I'm going. And she was laughing at me, but I was like, I need to shoot just to see what happens.
Well, let's get you back on when you finally make a decision.
I will. I know a lot of people are going to be. You too. I'm looking forward to hearing what you decide.
You'll probably decide sooner than I have. So I personally probably will not be making a choice until probably the end of the year.
Oh, okay. So I will definitely be before that. Well, I was also waiting because as we're recording this, CES just finished. So I thought maybe something might get announced there. I mean, there was some nothing that made me go, ooh, but I mean, I don't know.
I would be very surprised if anything surprisingly revolutionary comes out from any manufacturer this year.
Yeah.
I think we'll see. I think what we've been seeing is, steady evolutions of technology, but nothing to the point where it's kind of like, oh my God,
right.
You all of a sudden the heavens open up and you're going,
this is and I do have to say, I mean, to any camera, so I do a lot of marketing work. One of the things I will say that, more camera manufacturers, I'm glad are doing whatever they want to call these influencer programs. It's fun to be able to have friends that you and I both know who are shooting for all sorts of different platforms. And it's great to be able to go, listen, why do you like this? Why did you associate with this brand? And, yes, some people could say they're biased, but knowing that there are friends too, and knowing that they're going to give an honest opinion, if they hated the product, no one's going to say, I love this product if they hate it just because they're getting to play with it. It's been really beneficial to be able to talk to people one-on-one about all the different brands and be like, why do you love this? Why do you hate it?
Especially when you know their work.
Yes.
I think that really is sort of key, because I think a lot of people will debate equipment and specs and choices,
right,
and you have no sense of
right
what their work is as a photographer. You just know them as some persona online, and they're saying, well, this is the best camera. That's
right.
The best
but if you know their work, you're like, oh, I like his or her photos. I like that style. I like what they're shooting. I want to talk to them.
Right, exactly. Because that for me is a much more informed choice than someone who, can read off specs off the top of their head.
Yeah.
And then I look at their work and I just go, get out.
Yeah, get out of here.
Opinion at this point doesn't mean anything, because your work is, is of no significance to me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of work that I want to do.
Right.
But if I see something in the images that I go, I really like that, and I can ask them informed questions about autofocus performance or metering or camera control, and whether it stands in the way of them being able to get their picture. Because that's the biggest thing, is I want a camera, not necessarily that's perfect, but that has fewer things that will get in the way of me and my picture.
Well said. Well said.
And if I can get that, I'm good.
I like it. Yeah. Well said. Because any camera you pick up today is going to take great images, but is it going to take the great images that you need to take? And that's what it boils down to.
Well, that's a good point as any to end this conversation. So, CC, thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
And I know a lot of people have a lot of comments and opinions, so you can go ahead and leave them below in the comment box. Be kind and generous. I don't want to see some, bring,
oh, don't get me wrong. We know there's going to be fights. I can already tell the Sony people and the Fuji people. It's just nature of the internet.
But stay tuned when when CC does make his choice, and by that time we'll probably have people who can join these hangouts for these first initial ones. So I'm just going to be me and the guest, but in the near future I'm going to have people who can come in, and we'll be fielding questions as well. So thanks again, and you can find out more about the Candid Frame by visiting thecandidframe.com. It's an interview podcast where we have conversations with some great photographers. And so if you only discovered us via this YouTube channel, go to candidframe.com and you can find out about all that we do. And CC, where can people go to find out more about you and what you do?
Easiest place to find me is cc-chapman.com.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks for joining us. See you next time.
See ya.